asking the questions mainstream journalists will never ask. This is your Richie Allen Show on richieallen.co.uk, Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, and triggerwarning.tv.
I'm very much looking forward to speaking with our guest this evening in this first hour. He was last with us on the programme back in the spring of last year. An amazing man, a former Royal Navy microwave weapons expert, and as I mentioned earlier, incredibly used to debrief captured spies during the Cold War. He's been a whistleblower on the hidden dangers of microwave weapons and everyday microwave technologies. He's spoken all over the world about these subjects, and we've been lucky enough to have him on the programme over the years as well. A number of you have been in touch with me in recent days and weeks to ask me to get him back on the programme to talk about the rollout of the of 5G. Well, what is 5G? People have been saying, what is it? Well, it's the fifth generation cellular telecommunications is what it is. And many people believe that it's going to bring a whole new era of problems for human health with it as it comes in. In fact, some academics in the United States have been warning about it, but they're not being listened to. Let's welcome back to the programme the terrific Dr. Barrie Trower. Barrie, welcome back. Lovely to have you back on. How are you?
Yeah, it's just Barrie. Yeah, just Barrie. It's just Barrie for me.
Great to have you back on, Barrie. The last time we had you on was back in May of last year. I know a lot's been going on since then. And I must remind our listeners, it's very interesting because when we speak to people like you, people, they often wonder, what about Barrie and where can I email him? Can I get in touch with him? And I tell them, Barrie, that Barrie is the genuine article. You can't email him because he doesn't use a computer and he doesn't have a mobile phone for obvious reasons, right?
No. I have a fountain pen and a bottle of ink. That's it.
Fantastic. Proper old school. Welcome back to the programme. We see a lot in the news lately about 5G. In fact, the UK independent broadsheet, well, it's not a broadsheet newspaper anymore, sadly, is running a story this week about the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who wants to build his own internet and mobile phone network using 5G, making it super fast, and which might allow him kind of stave off the Chinese and the Russians and anybody else spying on his phone calls. This technology, Barrie, I'm guessing that the public at large really don't know very much about it. They've had 3G smartphones, they've had 4G smartphones. We know that 5G is on the way. What is your understanding of what it's going to do, what it's going to be, and why we should be paying attention to it?
Well, it's not just the general public who don't really understand it. The scientists who have produced it have absolutely no idea of the mathematics of the waveform that it's going to produce or that it is producing. We know that it is generally it's in the gigahertz range. Now I'll explain that. But the problems is that first there are like its predecessors. There are no safety checks at all carried out on 5G. There are no safety tests at all carried out on anything to do with 5G. It is known that the gigahertz range, in other words, the waveform, the waves that come out, it is known that they are in the same frequency as some of our cellular processes in our body, some of our cells. It is known they can interfere with the cellular processes of the body. There are several different waveforms for 5G. It isn't just one wave. Already, I do know that 40 leading groups of scientists in 40 countries, leading scientists in 40 countries have warned that the waveforms from 5G can be particularly harmful, not just to humans, but to all living species. And I can tell you as a military man that one of the top waveforms for 5G is incredibly close. And in terms of electronic waveforms, there really isn't much difference from the new microwave weapon called active denial that is now in use for crowd control to subdue and bring down crowds. And that is known or reputed to cause visual disturbances, certainly neurological disturbances, heart disturbances, all sorts of things. Now, that is the new active denial, which can be also released from aircraft or beamed from aircraft. That is incredibly close to one of the frequencies on 5G. And as I said, the waveform is so mathematically complex that nobody can really tell you how it's going to react, other than it makes a damn good weapon. And we are now producing this and handing it to toddlers.
You and I spoke many years ago on television in London, and you spoke. I didn't know anything about any of this at the time. My old pal David Icke and others had said to me, and had been writing about it and the dangers of it, but I'd never had anybody like you on the programme. And you said to me, or I'll never forget it, you said, Richie, as it stands, you said, low-level wireless radio frequency, that's low-level wireless radio frequency. This is back now 6-7 years ago. When we're exposed to that, it can disrupt cell metabolism, it can reduce melatonin, which of course controls your sleeping and your waking cycles.
And your immune system.
And your immune system.
And your immune system, yeah.
And you said it'll disrupt brain glucose metabolism and it'll mess around with the blood-brain barrier. That was low-level wireless radio frequency. And you were proven to be right. So this is something different entirely, Barry, for the lay person. What's it like? Is it like turning 4G up to, from 7 up to 1,000 on the dial on the radio? What is it?
I suppose the simple answer, of course, is yes and no. Each particular frequency can affect different parts of the body. You have in an adult body, you have around 4,500 biological structures, and every part of your body, every single part of your body is in communication with every other part. Every single cell in your body produces its own electric and magnetic field. And it's like a constant chatter that goes on in your body all the time. But they all have their own different resonant, cyclotronic, and circadian frequencies. Now, when I was talking to spies and studying this during the Cold War, it was realized that different frequencies could cause different things to happen in the body. There's a frequency that can cause the bowel to collapse, the eyes to go funny, the heart to collapse, and so on. And there are 4,500 different structures in the body that can be known to be affected. So as you run through the 2G, 3G, 4G, then you can affect different ones. When I was talking to spies, and my list, the list that I made, I suppose I had an active list of networks then that used between 40 and 60 different frequencies that could cause up to around 100 neurological and physiological conditions. The latest list that I have, I've seen one of 600. The latest list I've seen or heard of is now 750 different frequencies that can cause neurological, physiological harm. But it isn't 750 where you get this one or this one or this one. Mathematically, it is 750 factorial, which means you can get the effects of 1 multiplied by 2, multiplied by 3, up to 750. Now, 5G is going to encompass a lot of what all of the other Gs have and introduce its own as well. And this is why the top scientists in 40 countries have actually signed a petition saying, you cannot do this. But like all of the other Gs, the industry and the government scientists are choosing to ignore the entire scientific body throughout the world and just plod on regardless, because they are actually above the law. They can buy the law. The industry, I had a symposium here not too many months ago there were 11 professors and research doctors here for 4 days discussing all of this and turning it into a DVD. And they were just absolutely horrified that nobody is being listened to. And the producer of this, he said, well, I've researched this industry, and it is now estimated at $17 trillion.
$17 trillion.
17 trillion. And when you have that much money, you can buy governments, you can buy countries, and it's not difficult to buy scientists. It really isn't. That will do an experiment which is legitimate but not accurate, and it will cause confusion. And this is what they're doing, and they're going to get away with it because they are above the law.
Can I ask you this, Barrie? Let me ask you this. Will we, again, going back to when we first began talking, we talked about the effects of radiation on the smallest creatures in the world. Well, not the smallest creatures, but the smallest creatures that we come into contact with every day. Birds, of course, and bees and insects.
Yeah.
Are we going to see, because we talked about how back in the early 2000s we saw incidences of birds falling out of the sky, birds abandoning their nests, all sorts of issues that we saw back then. Are these issues, are we going to see more of this in the next 2 to 3 to 4 years?
Yes, it's going to get worse. In my paper, which I wrote 3 years ago now, Wi-Fi thalidomide in the making, I predicted for the human race that, and David Icke picked this up and published it, I didn't predict, I proved, using government figures, World Health Organization figures, secret figures, I proved that in just 3 generations, 60 years of human life, only of the exposed populations, only 1 in 8 children after 3 generations could be born healthy. Now, that has been, people picked that up and ran with experiments, which I'm very pleased of. And oddly enough, I read just a few days ago that experiments show that entire species of animals, entire species can be extinct in 5 generations. Now, that would match my prediction, because if you've got only 1 in 8, roughly after 3, you then don't have enough population of anything to sustain a workable population. So it's been published, I read it just a few days ago, that they are now showing that after 5 generations for some animals, they could become extinct, except, and this is interesting, except bacteria and viruses. They seem to proliferate and grow and become more deadly in microwaves.
So while it's destroying the biological makeup of creatures, of mammals, of marsupials, of human beings, it actually increases the potency of viruses and some bacteria. That's extraordinary.
Oh yeah, it was because this came up in our conversation, and I can tell you he wouldn't mind. He's published it. It was Professor Moskala, who is the senior professor of Vienna University. I mentioned this, and he said, "Oh yes," and he came out with the proteins on the bacterium and that. But it's known and it is published that bacterium, when they're exposed to microwaves, they can reproduce so rapidly that they have a defensive mechanism. Well, of course, they are the oldest living beings on the planet. They've developed a defensive mechanism, and they reproduce more rapidly, and they become immune to antibiotics. They sort of turn into sort of a superbacterium.
There's a couple of quotes I want to just read out here from learned men and women. This is Olga Sheehan. She's a former employee of the World Health Organization, and she wrote a book called No Safe Place. You might be aware of Olga, Barrie. Olga says, Olga, yeah. Olga says, the plans to beam highly penetrative 5G milliwave radiation at us from space must surely be one of the greatest follies ever conceived of by mankind. There will be nowhere safe to live. And as well as not hearing Barrie Trower on BBC television or radio, we don't hear people like Olga Sheehan. That's, everybody in the world should hear that, whether they want to dismiss it out of hand or whether they want to investigate it. The greatest follies ever conceived of by mankind. There will be nowhere safe to live, Barrie. Is this an extinction event, Barrie, that's coming for us?
To be honest, I don't study ecosystems and biological systems, but I don't consider myself knowledgeable enough with respect to answer that question.
Fair enough.
I don't know what's behind the people who are doggedly ignoring most of the world's leading scientists, ignoring all of the cancer statistics, the birth statistics, the animal statistics. They are ignoring everything, whether it is just to increase their 17 trillion to 20 trillion and then sort of leave things and do a runner and hide somewhere, or it is an extinction program. I have
you
no idea.
You don't know. And out of respect for you, by the way, my friend, I've known you a long time. Out of respect for you, I wasn't asking you that because I wouldn't do that because it's not right. Yeah. And I know you're going to give the proper answer anyway. Forgetting about what isn't behind it or why, just the bare bones of what we know, we have to consider that it could be extinction. But then there are other learned men and women who are saying that we're being transformed by other means anyway, human beings, through immunization, through vaccination, through geoengineering, and that maybe some sort of hybrid human being of the future would be able to withstand some of this stuff. But I know this is only stuff we can speculate on. But if we leave that to one side, go ahead, Barrie, go ahead.
Yeah, no, not quite, because you with these microwaves, and it is known. There are 20, 30,000 research papers. With microwaves, we do know that every living thing on the planet, except bacterium and virus, every living thing, trees, everything, plants, every single thing, birds, fish, everything is affected by microwaves. Now, with us, when they're beaming these down from satellites, you have nowhere to go.
Nowhere.
You have absolutely nowhere to go. But you do have a choice at the moment not to be vaccinated. You have a choice not to eat certain foods. There is a little choice that you can have. It may be living away from the general population, which some people would quite like, but you have a choice not to do those. There is no choice with microwaves.
You've nowhere to go. I want to read another quote. By the way, Barrie Trower is live on the line from his home this evening. It's great to have Barrie back. It's been ages. He's had an amazing career as a former UK Navy weapons researcher. He's an expert in directed energy weapons, and of course, at one time, Barrie debriefed Cold War spies. An extraordinary man, and he's been talking about these issues for many, many years. Let me just throw another quote at you there. By the way, I do accept your point, by the way, that at the moment you can exempt yourself from vaccines and that sort of stuff. You're absolutely right, Barrie. But we've interviewed young men and women on this programme who've been put under enormous pressure by local health authorities to vaccinate their children under threat of, if you don't go along with it, you'll get reported to social services. All of that's coming down the line, but you're right, and I'll agree with that. Let me just read another quote, by the way, just to back up what Barrie has been saying. Professor Trevor Marshall directs the Autoimmunity Research Foundation in California. He's an establishment man, and this is what he says. He says, the new 5G wireless technology involves millimeter waves producing photons of much greater energy than even 4G and Wi-Fi. Allowing this technology to be used without proving its safety is reckless in the extreme, as the millimeter waves are known to have a profound effect on all parts of the human body. There you are again, Barrie, to endorse what you're saying. Establishment scientists and PhDs are saying this is deadly and we shouldn't be doing it.
It is. There's not a single part of your body that will not be affected.
The question begs to be asked then. You talked a few moments ago about meeting academic men and women, and I know this to be true. We've read them online. This is common, Barrie. They're just going to do this. But they are doing it. It's out there, and it's going to have a profound effect on the ecosystem. It's going to have a profound effect on us. And I know you don't have the answer to this, but I've got to throw it out there. What can Joe Bloggs do about this? Josephine Bloggs, what can we do?
This has been discussed with leading scientists around the world. And the general consensus with leading scientists is that this is genocide. Forward and simple. I do know 5 professors that have already brought charges of genocide against the government scientists who are pushing this out, along with industry cooperation. What I would like to see, and I don't think I will, I would like to see a Nuremberg-style trial, because around every single transmitter, and to my knowledge there are over 200 epidemiological studies around ordinary straightforward transmitters, where you have 8 different types of cancers suddenly spring up and people die in their hundreds. We have all of the cell phone brain tumors. Many have been taken to court now. But the industry seems immune. The industry seems immune from all of this and is just pushing ahead, regardless of petitions, international petitions. From, I know in one of my papers, I think I cited over 200,000 of the world's top medical consultants, scientists, something like 200,000, who were all, I listed them, who were all really worried about this, and it's absolutely, totally ignored. They will do absolutely nothing, and their attitude is, we have the money, all you have to do is take us to court. It's as simple as that. But court cases with these can take years, and you need to be very, very rich.
You do indeed, don't you, Barrie? Not only that, but you need to have a lot of faith in the justice system, don't you? That you're going to get a judge or you're going to get a panel of people whom are impartial. And this is a problem as well. Loads of questions and tweets on this. Limiting your exposure to it. I've been reading articles today, including your own work, Barrie, looking back over your own terrific body of work over the years. And I understand that maybe I don't know how expensive these things are, but people have said to me, get an EMF meter, obtain readings and identify hotspots, and if you can avoid those hotspots, all the best, or even mitigate exposure, eliminate the source if you can. Try and stop the smart meter being introduced to your home, although the smart meters are being rolled out. Do you recommend that, an EMF meter, and try to limit your exposure? Is that a possible way of offsetting the effects of it?
The EMF meters that are out at the moment wouldn't pick up 5G anyway.
Wow.
They certainly don't pick up the pulse frequencies. They have quite a narrow range. So the only meter I know that will pick up just about everything that's coming around is a full-range electromagnetic spectrometer, and they are around £5,000 to buy.
Wow,
and
you
really need an electronics degree to read all the dials and work them.
So good luck with
you
that.
can hire people that will come and do this, and you can shield, but it can be very expensive. But the other thing that I've noticed around the world, and I've zigzagged all over the world, is that the main transmitter, apart from 5G, the main transmitters tend to be put up in poor areas. With no disrespect to poor people, they tend to be put up in very heavily dense populated poor areas because they know poor people cannot take them to court. 5G are different. 5G are taking a different approach here. They're having a very short range from their transmitter, and they're going to put it, well, they are putting it, on every single lamppost, every street sign. You're never going to be more than, in some cases, sort of 30 yards from a transmitter. So they are going to be everywhere. Lots and lots of low-powered ones, but of course collectively they will build up to what you would get from a big transmitter. But there are going to be millions upon millions of them everywhere, inside your house, inside things you buy, inside your phones, inside computers, on lampposts, on street signs, probably on trees if the council own them, just about everywhere.
Couple of questions, Barry, before we run out of time. The control of thought. This is a thing you and I have talked about over the years. The person operating this, or persons, if they want, they can plant suggestions in people. They can plant subliminal. They can give them ideas. They can make them think certain things and maybe even do certain things. There's no doubt about this, right?
Oh, even better than that. What it's called audio hallucination. They can do that, and it's an amazing. I mean, I've actually seen it in working. It's an amazing thing. They can beam the pulsed microwaves towards your head or your body, and you will hear actual voices and sounds as if somebody was standing right beside you and talking to you, and you'll look round and you'll see nobody here. But they can do any voices, and the dangerous thing, this is used in brainwashing, the dangerous thing is that they can pretend to be an angel or a god or a demon, and they can convince you, as I have read, they can convince you that if they are a Holy Spirit, that you need to do this to destroy evil. And they can get you to do things that you wouldn't ordinarily do. It's quite a sophisticated form of brainwashing, but it's called audio hallucination, and it is so popular, it's actually been picked up by big department stores, and they beam people coming in to say, you would like this meal and not that meal, which is more expensive, or you want to buy this because your wife will be pleased, or they're actually targeting people and that's been taken to court and proven.
So you'll be watching the 6 o'clock news sometimes, and we'll get a story about a mass shooting event somewhere, and you can't discount the possibility that the shooter who's killed lots of people or blown themselves up might be as much of a victim as the people they've killed, because this could have been, part of the whole thing. It could have been used on them, right?
Yeah. It's so easy, and I say this with no disrespect to you, sir. It is so easy, but I could probably start to turn you to do things you wouldn't ordinarily do in 30 hours.
A day and a half.
If I had you in my control in a building that I wanted, and I wouldn't physically harm you, there would be no fingernail pulling, nothing like that. There'd be no bruising, no bleeding. If I had you in a building, I could probably start to turn you, even maybe turn you within 30 hours. Given a couple of weeks, there would be absolutely no problem whatsoever using this method.
Free will is gone in a day and a half.
Yeah. 30 hours. The average person cannot take this more than 30 hours. Military people who know what's coming and know how to avoid it and have been trained, they know how not to get caught if they can put up with it. But the average person can be turned in 30 hours.
Barrie, just one final question.
That is from the spy schools.
30 hours, a day and a half, amazing. We less than a day and a half, in fact. We've had quite a lot of tweets on this. In fact, we've had dozens and dozens and dozens of them. There's a bit of a discussion going on the Twitter page. Listeners are talking about microwave ovens. You and I, again, going back some years, we talked about microwave ovens. Should people get rid of their microwave ovens, Barrie, or is it a case of it's too late to do that now? What do you say to that?
There are 2 or 3 different answers to this. It's always been recommended, even by people who make microwave ovens, that you should never cook baby food or children's food in microwave ovens. The reason being is that food is made from living things, be they plant or animals, and the living tissue still has the protein structures that can be affected by microwaves. And if you affect the protein structures, they can become what are known as prions or rogue proteins, and they could start to affect the body when they go in. When you digest them, it may be 20, 30-year process. Nobody really knows. But if you change the protein structures of what you are eating, that could have a knock-on effect in the body. This is why they say never do baby food or children's food. Now, if you're my age and you want to do a quick potato or something, there shouldn't be any difference in me. The other problem with microwave ovens, and you take your risks and you take your chances with them if you have one, the other problem is that I've yet to come across a single person other than me where somebody has said, would you come along with a detector and see if it is leaking? Because once you've banged the door with a plate or slammed it or knocked it, all you want is the tiny little leak in the glass or the seal around the door, and you have a very powerful microwave beam coming out. And they're usually eye level, and people tend to stare in them to see what's happening. And microwaves are renowned for causing cataracts and blindness in the eyes, because the eyes are really full of water or moisture, and microwaves react with water and moisture. So if you're staring into the things and they're leaking, then you are in trouble. So if you do have a microwave, check it. And an easy way to check it is to, if you have a cell phone, put your cell phone in the oven and then just get somebody to ring the number. If the microwaves go into your cell phone and it rings, you know that it's got a leak.
How interesting that, because I haven't personally used one for donkey's years, but I'm fascinated by what you said there about the cell phone. Barrie, I want to thank you for coming on. I've tweeted a link to your brilliant paper, Wi-Fi, a thalidomide in the making. I've tweeted a link there. We always have that on standby, so people can see it.
Well, that is proof, and it's not my figures. It is absolute proof from the leading scientist of the World Health Organization that of all of the exposed females, around 47% of them can expect miscarriages or a genetically damaged child. But you need to remember, please, that girls younger than the women who were experimented on here during the Cold War, children absorb 60%, up to 60% more microwaves than adults because their bodies are more moist and their electrical conductivity is greater. So children can expect 60% more danger from microwaves than adults. And one of the first symptoms for a child is suicidal tendencies.
That's a siren call for anybody with young children listening to the programme. Read the report. I've tweeted it out there. It'll be on our Facebook page a bit later on. Barrie, you're an absolute star. Thanks for coming on to talk about that again. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Can you have me on again to answer all of the rest of the questions from the ladies and gentlemen when it's convenient?
100%. I'll tell you what, Barrie, as soon as you want to do that, if you want to do that in a week or so, we'll give over an entire programme. And we'll get because we've had hundreds, literally hundreds tonight. So I'll give you a call in the next day or so. We'll arrange an event.
Give me a call in a day or two, and we'll fix up a day, and we'll just handle everybody's questions. I don't want the questions in advance. I don't need to know them in advance, but just get a list of the hardest questions and the most interesting ones, and you just blast me with the questions.
That's brilliant, Barrie. Absolutely right, okay. We'll do that. Thanks for doing it. I appreciate it, and we'll be in touch real soon.
I consider it an honour to be on your programme.
You're a gent.
So give us a ring, and then we'll arrange something in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Barrie. Thanks for coming on
again.
My
pleasure, sir.
Great to have you on. What a wonderful man. Barrie Trower, an extraordinary man. My friend and colleague Jean-Anne Crowley in Cleggan in the west of Ireland said to me, and it's kind of profound, he should be a household name, says Jean-Anne. Well, he should be. But, in this country, in the short term, it's not likely that he will be. Along with Olga Sheehan and Professor Trevor Marshall and others trying to sound the alarm about this. Barrie Trower on the Richie Allen Show for Wednesday, January 31st, 2018. Going to take a very quick break. When we come back, there's an enormous amount of tweets. I won't get through them. Go on Twitter. Where it says search Twitter, put Richie Allen Show, all one word, press enter, and you'll see the conversation going on there about what Barrie had to say to me this evening. And I'll arrange him to come back on, if not next week, definitely the following Monday or Tuesday. And we'll do a full show. And if people want to phone in and ask him a question, we'll try and logistically do that. It's better if we do that through Skype, but Barrie, of course, is not on Skype, wouldn't have anything to do with it.